We're all living in two worlds at the same time. There's the internal one, right? The world of our memories, our feelings. And then there's the external world, the one with systems and rules and laws. But what happens when those two worlds crash into each other? Today, we're going to explore that exact friction point. What happens when the very personal reality of trauma meets the cold, hard structure of the legal system?
We're going to start right here, not with the legal code, but with a life. This one sentence, taken from a therapist's notes, it holds an entire universe of personal history. This is the bedrock of someone's experience. And it's this reality that is about to collide with a system that, frankly, doesn't speak its language.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to paint a portrait of what trauma really looks like. Then we'll see what happens when the law has to get involved. We'll break down the rigid rules of the justice system, feel the pressure it creates, and finally, we'll ask a really big question about the difference between justice and healing.
To really get the conflict that's coming, we first have to understand the internal world we're dealing with. Look, this isn't just about something that happened in the past. It's about the daily, right now reality of living with the fallout.
The therapy notes give us a clinical snapshot, and these aren't just words or feelings, they are formal diagnoses. Chronic PTSD, bipolar disorder, anxiety, panic attacks, depression. Every single one of these carries its own weight, and it shapes how a person has to move through the world, day in and day out. And managing this reality is an active, constant process. It's a full-time job. This list of medications from the file really shows us that. We're talking mood stabilizers, anti-anxiety meds. This is the scaffolding that's needed just to keep things stable.
The long-term effects here are just profound. As the notes tell us, this person has a history of being hospitalized and is on disability. This isn't something you just get over. It's something that fundamentally changes the entire path of your life.
Okay, so now let's bring in the other major player in this story, the legal system. Just imagine that this person now has to get involved in some kind of civil case, could be anything really, but it forces them to step into this formal, rule-based world. And this brings us right to the core question of this whole explainer. What actually happens when the messy, complicated, nonlinear reality of a traumatized mind has to operate in a world built on clean, logical, and unbending rules? To get a handle on the system, we're going to turn to our second source, the North Carolina General Statutes. Just think of this as the official rulebook. It's not designed to be compassionate, it's designed for one thing: procedure, for order, for finality. Okay, this is where the sparks really start to fly. We're going to put the lived experience of trauma right next to the demands of the law and just watch them collide. I mean, just look at how these two worlds see something as basic as time. For someone with chronic PTSD, time can be like a tangled knot. The past isn't really past. It can feel like it's happening right now. But for the law, time is a straight arrow. It's a rigid, unforgiving line that only moves in one direction. A perfect example of this is the Statute of Limitations. It's a law that basically says you have a certain window of time to file a lawsuit. And a law like this one in North Carolina gives you a hard deadline. It doesn't care if you weren't psychologically ready to deal with it. The clock starts ticking the moment the event happens, and when it stops, that door to the courthouse often slams shut for good. The legal process itself is this very logical, step-by-step march forward. It's all laid out in the rulebook. You have to file a complaint, then serve a summons, then answer these written questions called interrogations, then give testimony in a deposition, everything in a very specific order. So think about something like a deposition. It demands you remember events perfectly, in order, often under a ton of pressure. So how does a person whose clinical profile literally includes panic attacks and memory disruption, how do they navigate that? The system's demands are in direct opposition to the person's documented symptoms.
You can probably see how all of this creates an incredible amount of pressure. The very mechanisms that are designed to create order and fairness in the legal system can actually feel like tools of stress, or worse, re-traumatization for the person going through it.
This table just lays it out so starkly, doesn't it? The law expects you to meet firm deadlines. Trauma can make it hard to even concentrate. The law needs you to testify calmly under oath. Trauma can trigger panic attacks. The system demands that you engage in conflict, but a very common trauma response is avoidance. The design of the process itself can feel like a punishment. And you might think, well, what about alternatives like arbitration? Isn't that supposed to be easier? And while it can be less formal than a trial, it's still a deeply structured process.
North Carolina's law outlines a formal hearing process. You're still in a system of rules and procedures, just maybe in a different building. The fundamental mismatch is still there.
And this brings us to the real heart of the matter. We have these two huge systems, therapy and the law, and they're operating with two very different end goals. Are they even compatible? And what happens when we mistake one for the other? Just look at the language. The words pulled from the therapist's assessment are all about the process, not the destination. Developed new insights, tolerance for affect. It shows that healing is a journey, right? It's an ongoing effort. There's no final verdict. Now contrast that with the language from the legal statutes. It could not be more different. It is all about finality. Enforce a judgment, satisfaction of judgment. The entire goal of the law is to end the fight, to get a conclusion, to close the book for good. And that need for finality is literally written into the code. This statute in North Carolina, for instance, gives you 10 years to enforce a monetary judgment. After that decade is up, that's it. The legal system's power to act just expires. And this, right here, is the ultimate clash. The law provides a hard deadline for resolution. But trauma, as that diagnosis, chronic PTSD, makes crystal clear, it doesn't have a deadline. It has no statute of limitations. Which leaves us with this final, massive question. Can a system that's built on rules and designed for finality ever really provide what a person built of memories and looking for a path toward healing actually needs? The law seeks justice, therapy seeks healing, and the difficult truth might be that they aren't just different goals. They are fundamentally two different languages.